I talked a little bit about the OEM example, and in this particular example, we're talking companies of the size of Caterpillar and Ford and people like that. Okay, in those kind of networks, you might have 1 million plus SKUs that go into a big tractor or a heavy industrial equipment. Okay? You have thousands of suppliers across 5 to 10 years, 10 to 2 years, and you have 100 plus manufacturing plants. And even with large products, you have a lot of products that are coming in, right? So given that the OEM does not really have more than 1,000 or 1,500 suppliers in the first year, it's impossible for them to really have complete visibility across this. Beyond 15-20%, they don't have visibility. Okay, so by bringing a shared infrastructure using blockchain as a mechanism, we are able to give a easy to write information, easy to read information, provided we address the privacy concerns. Okay? People don't want to see their competitors' information. So we actually have a framework where we encrypt the data and make sure that access is only given to the people who are supposed to have access, and the owners of the data control who gets to see that information, right? So what we're doing is we're simplifying this process for allowing information to flow in real time. So that's one example. Here is a different use case. It's a small manufacturer. So the other one was a large Fortune 100 company. Here's a small manufacturer. Okay? They make custom poker tables. Okay? These tables get shipped over land using trucks, and they had a couple of problems that they faced. One, the trucks sometimes things get damaged during transportation. People handle things carelessly, and then when the customer receives it, the table's damaged, it's broke, something happened, etc. Okay? Now, if the customer says this happened, invariably the carrier says it's not my fault. It was either damaged when you gave it to me, or it is damaged by the customer. Okay? So we don't know who caused it. Okay? That's one type of problem. Okay? The damage attribution is important because if it is the carrier's problem, then their insurance company is supposed to pay for it. If it's the manufacturer's problem, the manufacturer voluntarily is supposed to fix it. And if it's a customer mishandled it, then it's up to the manufacturer to work with the customer to see how they want to support that scenario, right? Now, there is also a second problem that we noticed. What we noticed was the carriers usually would quote for moving this furniture. They would say it costs $200. Okay? When we actually looked at the invoices that came from this, we started seeing a curious pattern. There were several carriers they were using, and invariably the quote and the actual invoice were different by consistently between 13 to 15%. They were getting overcharged 13 to 15%. Okay. Now, if you're smart enough to notice it or you're on it, and it's hard to trace this because your quote came a few weeks back, invoice comes a few weeks after deployment. How do you tie the things together? They are in different systems. They're coming from different places. You may or may not have the systems that put everything in one place. So the bigger companies might have SAP and they might have things in their place and they can reconcile, but your invoice may not identify what was in the original code and may not tie them together. Right? So there's manual work involved. Okay? So it only depends on how good your people who are in receiving an API are in terms of how well the documentation is done. So what we looked at is, and if you actually noticed it and then you went and asked the carrier will basically say that your dimensions are wrong. Your volume is different, your weight is different, your whose version of truth is correct? That's a hard dispute, right? So what we did with this manufacturer was they already were keeping some evidence because they're having this issues. They were keeping some evidence into their CRM. We extended that by saying that keep videos, keep dimensions, keep weight, etc. And we pulled together a little simple overlay system that allowed them to record that information on the blockchain, put a QR code on it, and allow the customer as well as the carriers to scan the QR code. If there's any issues with the package they receive it, all you need to do is say it's damaged, and then take some pictures, videos, upload it, you're done. Okay, it helps you activate the warranty. We even have a video how this is done on YouTube, done by the CEO of BBO Poker Tables, explaining people how to use it. So blockchain as a technology doesn't need to be hard technology to implement. It can be very simple application like this. All we're doing is sharing one common version of truth, and that allows people to interact with it. Okay, and we were able to go from having a lot of customer service kind of issues to over 90% customer satisfaction just by that simple thing. And it's a small manufacturer. It did not cost a lot of money for them to do it. Here is a more sophisticated use case. This is an organic mattress brand. They've grown tremendously in the last few years. And they claim to have vegan organic mattresses, and that is how they've been selling. They've been selling direct to consumer. They have grown rapidly in the last few years. One of the challenges they faced was the competitors were selling a lot cheaper, and they were also claiming organic. So the question is, how do you, and they've actually sent a team of people to Himalayas in India where their sheep were being raised. There are about 200,000 heads of sheep that were roaming freely in the foothills of Himalayas. Their latex was coming from Guatemala and South India. And they were shipping it from different countries. They had different systems in each of these subcontractors who were providing these different things. The factory was in Los Angeles, and they were shipping it directly to the consumer from the factory. So the assembly was happening here, but there was no single source of truth. There was no single source of data. So what we did is, and knowing that you're dealing with small farmers who are mostly illiterate, you can't really go and put a lot of technology in front of them. Don't expect them to start writing documents and things like that. They were used to writing things on pieces of paper at most. Okay? So when we start looking at the digitalization journey, we started working with things like mobile phones, cameras, and in places where they were roaming between India and Pakistan kind of border, there's no cell phone service. So we even had to deal with situations where there were avalanches and people have died because of that, etc. So the safety of the farmers was also one concern, right? So the environmental, social, governance parameters start coming into play. ESG is a big thing in many companies. So the question is, how do you take these data that you as a company are putting a lot of effort into making sure is happening, then how do you communicate in a way that your customers can actually understand that you're doing what you're supposed to do, while others may not be, and how can you raise the quality of your brand, right? So we started collecting data from each stage, at the farm stage, at the cleaning stage, certification stage, the materials being used, no chemicals being used, and all of the information we were tracking. We were tracking the movement from the trucks to the ships, the containers, and then at each of the factories with videos and images and other data, connecting the dots and putting it in a very simple story that helps you tell the brand story. Okay? With a QR code on the mattress that allows you to pull up the information associated with the mattress that you brought, which lot, what went into that lot, who actually contributed to putting that in, and in a way that is simple enough for people to grok, but deep enough for a regulator to verify that this information has been put in, signed off by authorized parties, people's identities are known, that the signatures are validated, and that information is available for people to check off, right? So that way the regulators get a much better digitalized process. The consumers get a simple understanding that this brand is going above and beyond. And then the company gets a digitalized process that eliminates a lot of the paperwork and the emails and the conversations that go back and forth when stuff fails. Okay? And so that is another way of building these mini applications on top of blockchain technology. So what you're really doing is when you start connecting the dots from farm to table or farm to customer, you are basically connecting from the farm with the production, the process, the manufacturing, with the intermediate certifications, through purchasing, through shipping and receiving, with manufacturing. Imagine each of these are different companies, and every company might have multiple systems, one for finance, one for shipping, one for transportation. They'll have different systems. So by blockchain is basically acting as that shared layer for people to share data across that is relevant to other people. And we actually don't want to put too much data on the blockchain. We only want to put the data verification signatures on the blockchain. And so we have a mechanism to share that across. And we do it with simple APIs. So your SAP can use it with any full stack developer can use our APIs in maybe 2-3 hours of programming work. Okay? It's simple read, write, and verify, just like you don't think about the complexities of how Oracle runs the database. We just call SQL and we read and write, and the information is there for us to retrieve. So by connecting the dots across this, we are now able to go all the way to the consumer feedback, and if they do returns, recalls, these rails are connected back and forth, and we can even give them loyalty rewards points. We can incentivize them to put a review on the web. We can give them some bonuses. We understand their customer buying patterns. So there's a lot more possible when you have a connected ecosystem. Before I get into looking at other use cases, let me stop and see you have other questions.
Any other questions? Jamie? Yes.
I just had a clarifying question. So you mentioned like how there are only like certain bits and pieces of information that is shared on the blockchain. So there's not any kind of like pricing thing on the blockchain. So you can't see the details of each transaction. So that's because I guess like my question is like, so if a competitor were to go into the blockchain to see what's like their competitor's like information is, they wouldn't be able to see that because that would be like encrypted information, correct?
Yeah, okay. and it's a great question. One of the reasons why the technology has been in this early stages of coming together is because people have those kind of concerns. If I come onto your network, will my competitors see my data? And there are all situations where competitors don't even want to see the fact that you're actually doing something with somebody else. Okay, right. So it's not just encrypting the data, but you also want to be able to share data in a way that nobody really sees, right? So, so we came up with this. So initially, we came up with this layer 2 mechanism that allowed us to read and write onto any blockchain. So you don't have to think about blockchain technology. All the hosting, cloud, etc. is kind of hidden from you, right? You don't have to worry about it. It's service. Above that, we came up with a security layer that allowed people to encrypt it and manage. The key management also is managed by that. And then we made the data opaque in a new technology called zero knowledge proof. So the way to understand that is, if you were to go to a bar and ask for a drink, they ask you for an ID. Your ID has your name, your date of birth, your address, and other stuff. But is it really relevant to the bartender? All they need to know is, are you over 21 or not? Right? So if you have a technology that says, yes, I'm over 21, you really don't need to share the other details in that. Right? So imagine a similar kind of technology allows us to pass information between participants. So we can go across, know that the information is valid to the people who have the rights to see that information, and nobody else sees that.
And then I guess sorry, just quickly, one other question. So within a blockchain, so like in a supply chain, right? Is that you can also set it to where it encrypts information between so you talked about from the farms all the way to the actual selling and retailing of a product. You don't want people even within your own supply chain to see each individual margin, because then they will be well, I'm giving it to you and then you're selling it for $50 extra. That's not very fair. So you can encrypt that information, or would that information within the same supply chain still have to be public?
Right. So this is an important point, actually. In the traditional system, in the databases, right, what happens is all the bytes are in one database under somebody's control, one person's control. So invariably, maybe database administrator, somebody has access to that information. Perhaps they have access rights and encryption and things like that, but still it's under the control of one entity. Here, we believe in the data being held with the owner of the data. So the owner of the data can dictate who gets to see the data. So you own the data, it is decentralized, it's with you, then you can share it with other people. And you can say, hey, so-and-so gets to see this information, somebody else only sees this other bit of information, not this piece of information. And these kind of technologies have to be built. And the technology is in a stage where these are getting built. So it's not like it's all available and popular. But once this technology starts getting built and these kind of problems get solved, then you will see that people start just using it. Cool.
I mean, this is such an important, especially, Sunil, when you're walking through the returns operations. I was thinking, even getting back to, I remember my automotive days, we used to say, somebody was driving a truck and there was, he thought there was an airbag inside, but there was no airbag inside, because after the whole thing happened, when they opened it up, there was a bunch of shoes inside. I mean, things like that happen in the aftermarket world. Okay, yes. I'm not talking about brand new vehicles produced by GM, or these are the ones which are going through workshops and other mechanics and all that stuff. And even some of them they go to Mexico and other places. And to Sunil's point, I mean, if you track all these products and you get a system where you can come back and say the OEM knows what is in that truck, right? What are the parts that has been replaced? And then, for maintenance and stuff like that, this is like huge impact. I mean, you can actually even alert people saying, this something is going to fail, and you can actually take it to the right dealerships, and you can even tell them where to go, because you might be close to a place where you can fix it. There's so many benefits. You're looking at revenue streams. There's cost opportunities, taking cost out of the process, plus safety, big time. Safety is huge as well. I mean, to the other point which Sunil brought up about the returns coming back, and he said you had to, they had to actually take pictures and videos and upload themselves. I worked in the returns operation. We had to, these boxes will come in. The same point he raised about who is at fault. Is it the transporter, or is it the customer themselves? So the box showed up. This is for the telecom industry. Or it might be somebody within the plant who actually used the forklift and damaged it. That could have happened also, because the stuff comes in, and so these are the different steps. So there are various methods we were looking at. We were using QB-scan technologies to scan the box from 6 sides, take pictures of that. Then once it comes through this conveyor down, they will open it up, look for any damage inside these are cell phones and stuff like that. So they look for any water damage, anything like that. If it's completely water damage, they will immediately inform saying it's customer abuse. So there were several steps in the process. If you look at the returns operations, it's so complex. And Motorola, Samsung, Apple, everybody was cluttering around this whole thing, trying to figure out what went wrong with my device, right? They were not saying, I don't care. They want to know. They want to really know, so that whatever is coming back, they can fix it. So that next time, if it's within the 14-day warranty period, they can actually make sure their sales don't get affected. So they can fix it immediately. So there's so many benefits I can see with this tracking mechanism. And I was kind of puzzled about this trustless word which you used, Sunil.
Yes.
We say trustless environment.
Yes.
Everybody got onto that, what we meant by trustless. What did you catch? What was your thought? Anybody else? I know Jamie knows. Who else? What is a trustless environment he's talking about? He said trustless. I cannot trust anyone. So there's this outside, yeah, kind of, in the sense like the system will provide that trust. It's trustworthy. So even if you are in a trustless environment, in a sense, I mean, the other people are not trustworthy. Your system is supporting that trust. Did I say it correctly, Sunil?
Yes, and I actually ask a related question. When you hear the word truth, what does it mean to you?
Something I can rely on.
Okay, that's good. Okay, and how do you know to rely on that?
Because it's been proven.
Because it's been proven. How has it been proven?
So my study based on previous records and performances
Of previous records and performances of what?
system.
Of the system. I mean,
Okay, so some kind of history. Okay, so consistency.
Understanding between two parties.
two parties. So do you trust the other guy, right? I mean,
Depends
whether
on-
he's trying to say the truth or not.
It depends on your history between the other parties.
You might trust him, but is he telling you the truth?
That comes over a period of time.
Does he always tell you the truth?
He's saying that it take time before.
And because before trust becomes truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now contrast that with the question: when you hear the word fact, what does it mean to you?
Supported by data.
Say that again. I couldn't hear that.
If it's like supported by data, so like the scientific method or like proven multiple times to be the exact same.
Give me an example of a universal fact.
Newton's law.
Okay, good one. That's a good one. Gravity, right? So there are certain things that we all hold to be fact based on observations or whatnot. Truth is more nuanced. Truth is more on agreement between parties. I believe, you believe, right? We agree on that as our common truth, right? And a consistent behavior of a certain number of truths, we can say, oh, I trust that guy, right? But all business happens based on trust. If your relationships are built on trust, then you can make decisions much faster. When you have zero trust, then it's hard to have any kind of decision made, right? So this trustless environment, we are basically saying that you are able to have the mathematics of making sure the data hasn't changed, allows you to not have to worry about that piece. You're not dependent on a brand representing it in a certain way. End of the day, what is a brand after all? It's a consistent behavior that you can believe in and you can go back and every time, right? So it's the entire organization that performs to a certain promise. That's the brand. So similarly, when you have a system that can give you mathematically something that cannot be changed, then I can use that as a substitute for trust, provided I have a good mechanism to put good data into the system. Because if I don't, then I not only have garbage in, garbage out, I have garbage forever. Right? I can never remove it, right? So when we see this NFT explosion that is happening today, I can take a JPEG and create an NFT out of it. I can take another JPEG and then create another NFT out of it. How do I know this NFT is valuable, right? And how do I know it's not a fake? Or, so the true value comes in if you can couple provenance, this is the authenticity of who created it. This is the real artist who created it, right? What happened to the original picture and what is the history attached to it? When you can attach history, then people value it more. The technology allows you to make sure that there isn't a second copy, that this is the only copy, this is the original copy. The technology also allows you to add other benefits like royalties and ownership transfers. All of this can be automated. But the reason Mona Lisa is valued highly is in the Paris Louvre Museum, where it is hanging. People have agreed that that is the original Mona Lisa, right? A Mona Lisa that you buy off the street will not have the same value, because in the digital world, you can copy something for literally zero cost. So the uniqueness is what blockchain technology is allowing you to create, and that is what is allowing you to create the value. But we have to really focus on making sure that that data you're putting in is trustworthy. And you have to be at least at the same standards as certification process to be able to do that.
I mean, the other point, Sunil, is like you have the data, the system is working, the truth is there, the data is actually correct, right? But still, you know, in companies, what you see is like people question that, right?
Yes.
They will say like, I don't agree with it. You have to go to different functional areas. I think that's where this consensus-based mechanisms, right, which you have within blockchain is providing that there's an agreement that happens between parties. Now we cannot question anything. It's solid.
Correct. And we can have our shared truth, which may be very different from a different community's version of truth. But for us, the consensus allows us to operate.
No, there's no question. There's consensus, there's truth. So nobody can question the authority of that. People have agreed to it already, right?
Yeah.
Because I remember, the one thing I remember when we talked about that was we used to publish an on-time report for our shipments.
Mm-hmm.
And we trusted it. That data was accurate from our perspective.
Yes.
But a lot of functional areas did not agree with that.
Yes.
They will have one or two instances of bad experience. They will say like, I don't agree with these guys. What are they saying? They're saying 98% on time. I don't agree.
Yes.
Right? So you have to, so the consensus is also equally important along with the data where it's coming from, the truth. And blockchain is such a technology that really combines both together.
Yeah. That's the power of it. When you can create this consensus and trust, and you can leverage technology to make that happen, then that eases up a lot of the other stuff that happens, all of those friction that happens between multi-party transactions, you can make it much more trustworthy. Okay? The other benefit of doing it this way is that once you digitalize something, today you have no way to trust anything that is digital. That is why we have lost faith in news. You can create fake news. You can create fake videos, right? So if you want to take some power back, then you have to create a much more trusted framework.